What is up, guys? Welcome back to Cage Chat MMA. We are here, of course, to talk about UFC Vegas 65. Back in the Apex, obviously, last week we had UFC 281, which went down an absolute treat. A full crowd, MSG, but we're back in Las Vegas in the Apex, which is a little bit of a downer. Obviously, when you come out of those pay-per-views, that following week is always a bit of a high, Monday to Wednesday, and then you get to that Thursday, Friday, and you get back to the Apex, and you're like, it's not a great card. It's a good card. Put some good names on it, but it's not the card that we had last week. And of course, it is in the Apex, which is, the atmosphere is a lot less than what you get in an MSG, in a Abu Dhabi card, in London, Paris, wherever we've been this year. So it's a little bit hard to get really excited. However, they have got a heavyweight clash, which is to get excited for. It is Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak. Now, this is Derek Lewis's probably biggest test of his career so far. Of course, yes, he's fought for the title, but he's been in a really bad, poor run. His form has been horrendous. He's won, 2-3 in his last 5 losses to Cyril Gane, Taito Thassa, and Sergey Pavlovich. All of those knockouts, all of his wins, also finishes. But of course, you remember the Taito Thassa elbow knockout, quite scary. Clean to the temple from Taito Thassa, and Sergey Pavlovich was someone who's on the come up. It was 15th or 14th maybe. Definitely a top 15 opponent when they fought, and obviously Pavlovich finished him in round 1. Now, there was talk about it maybe being an early finish or an early stoppage from the referee, but you could see the fight going in that direction. You could probably make an argument there was a good finish. You could make an argument that it could have gone a little later, similar to Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira, but I think the unanimous sort of opinion is that that was a good stoppage, as was the Pavlovich stoppage against Derek Lewis. And Derek Lewis is 37 years of age now. Of course, I know he had some back issues, did he? Or he had a back issue. I know DC obviously had back issues going into UFC 230. But I think Lewis has also had some issues of his own. Obviously, since that title fight, he lost to JDS, but then he went on a 4-fight run against Blagoy Ivanov, Latifi Oleinik, Curtis Blaydes. The Curtis Blaydes knockout was absolutely brutal. The uppercut timed it perfectly when Curtis Blaydes came in to come for the takedown. Of course, he finished Chris Daukaus also, so he showed glimpses and shades, but it's been very hit and miss. There's been no consistency. There's been no sort of median. It's been either gets finished or gets to finish himself, and it's difficult to see where he is in his career, which is why tonight is such a big one for him. Of course, it's in Vegas. Of course, I believe all 3 losses have come in. Obviously, Texas, of course, is home state. Maybe the pressure got to him. It definitely did at UFC 265. It might have done a little bit at 271, trying to get that win back. Trying to, avenge that loss from the Cyril Gane fight. But it's not been great for him. And Sergey Spivak is not an easy competitor to fight against and to face against. He's 15-3. Again, he's on a 2-fight winning run at the moment. Both finishes, both bag round pound, one in round 1, one in round 2 against Augusto Sakai and Greg Hardy. So this is the perfect step up for him. And he will be chomping at the bits. Of course, his last was against Tom Aspinall, who is recovering from his ACL injury that he faced against Curtis Blaydes back in London. But of course, he's going to probably want to be looking at getting that back in a win tonight, which put him only 1 behind Tom Aspinall. I mean, let's have a look at the rankings so far. Of course, Spivak is 12th or 13th, so not quite making the top 10. But again, similar to Pavlovich, a winner of the Derek Lewis shoots you right up there. And it would put him 1 behind Tom Aspinall, and maybe a rematch in London, maybe towards the end of the year. Of course, you've got Rose, you've got Tyburi, you've got Pavlovich, Taito Thassa. Got a fight coming up soon, I believe. After that loss to Cyril Gane himself. So it's a great position for Sergey to be in. And it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, Taito Thassa is fighting Sergey Pavlovich, of course. So those 2 are ruled out. Although when March and April comes around, I'm sure they'll be clear because they're fighting it. Actually, they're fighting December in a couple of weeks. So yeah, the schedule line up for the winner tonight to maybe get a fight with that. Obviously, if Pavlovich and Lewis wins, then we've already seen that fight. We don't need to see it run back, although there is argument for the stoppage. Maybe there's a little bit of room there to make that fight. If obviously Tai Tuivasa wins, you'll be looking up at a Curtis Blades or maybe a Tom Aspinall return. For Tuivasa, we don't know where Stipe's at the moment, whether he's going to be fighting again. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about John Jones returning, and seemingly he's going to fight Francis Ngannou, which I believe there's a good decision for him. And for the UFC also, they can't risk him going in there with a Ciryl Gane, Stipe, and Blades and losing that fight. Obviously, maybe business-wise, it could also be beneficial because, again, if Gane beats him or Blades beats him, then they effectively take his first loss away from him. Of course, he's got the Matt Hamill loss on his record, but a lot of the media and those within MMA almost brush it off. So it would be an interesting one should John Jones come back and fight Francis Ngannou. But let's say he fought the number two, as we just seen, Blades or Ciryl Gane. If he lost that fight, where that shine would be, obviously the talk would be, oh, he's taken too long off, or he's not big enough for heavyweight. But yeah, it would be an interesting landscape for this division. Of course, John Jones is still largely considered as the greatest of all time, despite what he's done outside the cage. Predominantly, that's affected his performances, perhaps inside the cage. And yeah, I think Francis Ngannou deserves a fight of that magnitude. I know again, it does huge numbers, I'd imagine, even with John Jones being out for so long. But back to tonight, Derrick Lewis, he needs to win tonight. If he doesn't win tonight, one, the title opportunities are gone. Now let's not forget he does have the win over Francis Ngannou. So if he can get 2-3 wins together, maybe the first fight was the worst fight, or one of the worst fights we've ever seen. But I think we've healed enough now from that to potentially get a rematch. But we shall find out, I suppose. But obviously, Lewis needs to get back on that run. Derrick Lewis says Tom Aspinall would be a good fight also. Obviously, Tom, we don't know when he'll be back. Probably June, July next year. I've not checked up on where he is with his recovery process at the moment. It seems like it's all going smooth, but we never know. There's always set-up or setbacks, etc. Again, for Spivak, if he wins tonight, I'd be looking at Tom Aspinall also. Aspinall's still got a lot of shine. He's growing on me. Again, we've become a huge fan, especially in the UK, of Tom Aspinall with his meteoric rise through the UFC, but showing his personality as well, especially through the injury at the moment. He's been a class. He's been a class act. But yeah, tonight, again, I don't see it going to the third round. I think one of these two are getting knocked out. If I had to bet on it, I'd probably edge towards Spivak just because of the form that Lewis is on. I can't put enough confidence in Lewis to get the win. But again, we've seen Lewis pull it out of the fire before, predominantly against Alexander Volkov, and he has been in the big fights with a better competition than Spivak. So he has got that over his head, and it looks like Derrick Lewis is in maybe a better form, better shape going into this fight than maybe he has been in previous fights where he's lost. So who knows? But again, let's have a look at the tape actually. 26-10 against 15-3. Equal height, of course. Derrick Lewis came in 2 pounds under or 3 pounds under the heavyweight limit for a non-title bout, and obviously 9 pounds heavier than Sergey Spivak. So how's that gonna, dictate in the fight tonight? Obviously, one inch reach advantage, but he has got 10 years on Sergey Spivak. Spivak coming into the prime of his career, and Derrick Lewis probably most notably on the back end of his prime, coming towards the end of his career. And it opens up debate with what Derrick Lewis does. If he loses tonight, does he seek fights elsewhere? Maybe at Bellator, because I'd put him up handily against Ryan Bader. I would maybe look at PFL, perhaps with Derrick Lewis. PFL is a albeit a very taxing and stressful sort of league to be in because you're fighting so frequently. And of course, the championships are this week, which we'll preview later this week also. But of course, if you win, you get $1 million. So there's a bit of security there, a little bit of incentive to go to a PFL more so than the other organizations, because that grind is not as difficult. Well, it's more difficult in terms of the frequency of fights and the volumes of fights in one 12-month period, of course. But you only need 2-3 wins. Whereas if you go to a Bellator, Derrick Lewis is a big name. He'll probably go into a contenders bout against maybe Daniel James or Tyrell Fortune that we saw last night. But he'd only be one win away from a title. Whereas PFL, I think there's something there. There's something special that PFL are doing with their league format. Um, but maybe he shows us that he's not quite done yet. Again, this card isn't the best, but we've got Iron Kutalaba versus Kenny Nchukwu in the light heavyweight division. Kutalaba 16-8-1 against Kennedy Nchukwu, who of course is 10-3. Kutalaba, similar in Derek Lewis, he's not in the greatest form. Two losses against Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann. Of course, Ryan Spann having that phenomenal win against Dominic Reyes, whereas Johnny Walker is going to be fighting Paul Craig coming up very soon in January. Of course, on that Brazil card. But his last win against Stephen Clark was unanimous decision. Prior to that, he drew to Jacoby, but he's only lost to really the very best of this division. Lovis Exiaro, Magomed Ankalaev twice. He did lose to Cannonier back in the day, of course, on the Ultimate 24 finale, but obviously Cannonier, a middleweight title contender. So the losses on his record, the most recent ones haven't looked the best, but on paper, they're not the worst losses to have in your career. But he needs to get back into winning ways because I think he's just outside of the heavyweight rankings. He was in there for a period, but he's those two losses have kicked him back out toward the 15th, 14th spot. Whereas Kenny Nchukwu, I believe, is looking to come into that. He beat Carl Robertson in July, but again, win against Carlos Wahlberg, Danilo Marquez. He was on a fantastic run since that loss to Paul Craig, but then he went and lost 2 in a row. So again, both of these need a win tonight if they want to be considered to that top 15 spot and really put themselves in there. Of course, you've got, again, Paul Craig coming off that loss to Ozdemir. He'll be looking to get back in there. Johnny Walker loss. I'm trying to think who else. Dominic Reyes as well. I don't want to see Dominic Reyes in there for a while because of the nature of his knockouts recently. Within his last few fights over the past, 3 years, maybe 4 years now. He's got to make a big decision. I wouldn't want to see him jumping back in there immediately. But yeah, both of these two need a win. We've got Chase Sherman versus Eduardo Cortez Acosta in the heavyweight division. Obviously, Chase Sherman 16-10. Coming off that win against Jared Van Der Raa in July. Obviously, before that, he was on a 4-5 skid. Alexander Romanov, Jake Collier, Parker Porter, Andrei Arlovsky. Able to finish 2 in those 4 losses. And Eduardo Cortez Acosta was 8-0, of course, undefeated. Made his debut against Jared Van Der Raa. Getting that decision win in October, of course, only less than a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago. He had to come through the Contender Series with Danilo Suzat, where he got a first round finish, and I think he gets the job done again tonight. Of course, it's a bit of a step up in competition, but 31 years of age, coming up against Chase Sherman, who's 33, so both of them in the prime of their career. But I think Wardo's got a bit of a higher ceiling than Chase Sherman currently. And I put Cortez Acosta up to getting the win tonight. But I may be shocked on that one. Muslim Salikhov against Andre Fialho. Andre Fialho, of course, coming in for his 5th appearance in the Octagon this year. In the calendar year, he's 2-2 so far. So be looking to end the year on a positive record. Losses to Miguel Pereira and most recently to Jake Matthews, but he did win against Miguel Beza and of course Cameron Van Camp. So it's a big one for him. Salikhov 18-3, lost to Jingliang Li back in July, of course. But it was prior to that. He was on a 5-fight win streak. Win against Francesco Trinaldo, Elizu Zaleski. So good wins for him. Nordin Taleb's a good win on his record. Also. So it's gonna be an interesting fight. Obviously, Salikhov is 38, whereas Andre Fialho's only 28. So again, another decade difference in the two's ages. Of course, I'm gonna edge towards Fialho just a little bit, but again, both a good matchup on paper. Jack Dilla Maddalena against Danny Roberts. Now, of course, Danny Roberts fighting out the UK. Danny Roberts, Hot Chocolate, as he's known, is on 18-6. He's 2-3 in his last 5, unfortunately. Losses to Claudio Silva, Miguel Pereira, and Francesco Trinaldo, but he did beat Ramazan Emiyev via split decision. Of course, Zalim Imadayev knocked him out in the second round. He's got wins over Oliver Enkamp and David Zawada. Again, losses to Mike Perry, Nordin Taleb. So again, he's someone who he always takes one step forward and maybe 2 steps back in his career. But he's been, a fantastic employee for the UFC. He's been fantastic for the representation of British mixed martial arts and the growth as we get into this, golden period. But he's coming up against a tough test in Maddalena. Maddalena, of course, 12-2. He's on a huge 10-fight win streak. He's not lost since his first 2 fights in Eternal MMA. Sorry, and I think he gets the job done tonight again, beating Amiev. Pete Rodriguez, since he's come out, he's 2-0 since his entrance to the UFC through the Contender Series. Another Contender Series alumni, they're popping up everywhere nowadays, aren't they? But again, good fight. I want to back the British on this one, but I think Maddalena is just a little bit too much for Danny Roberts. But I'll be happy to prove them wrong. Zhalgas Zhumagulov against Charles Johnson in the flyweight division. Jonathan Maia against Marina Moroz. That's an interesting one. Obviously, Jonathan Maia, former title contender against Valentina Shevchenko at 125. 99-1. But of course, again, similarly, actually, she's 2-4 in the last 6. 2 losses to Katlyn Chookagian, the loss to the champion, and most recently lost to Manon Fiorot, who's seemingly next in line for the title, maybe just one behind Tyler Santos. It deserves a rematch, in my opinion. Marina Moroz, similarly, coming up, 31 years of age, coming up like a Fiorot has done. She's on a 3-fight win streak. Sabina Mazo, Mayra Bueno Silva, and Maria Ajapova. So this is a big test for her. It's a big step up in competition. All those are good wins, fantastic wins. She's had the loss to former champion Carla Esparza, former strawweight champion that is, and of course, she's beaten Joanne Calderwood, I believe. So yes, it's an interesting position for her to be in. But if she beats a former champion, she's climbing those rankings. You've got Casey O'Neill, you've got Alexa Grasso up there, you've got some of those in the top 15. Andrea Lee, of course, Miranda Maverick is there, and of course, Erin Blanchard had just come off that fantastic win against Molly McCann. So, if Moroz can get the win tonight, it would be fantastic for her, and hopefully we can get some fresh blood in this flyweight division and get it the love and attraction it deserves. But yes, I'm gonna go with Moroz to get the win on that one. Miles Johns against Vince Morales. Ricky Tercios versus Kevin Natividad, of course. Ricky Tercios coming off the Ultimate Fighter. Looked good in his opening official UFC debut, but of course in his last fight against Ayman Zahabi, didn't look so impressive. Got a bit shocked on the night, I believe. Wasn't throwing those strikes, wasn't the most impressive performance of his career. So he could be looking to bounce back against Kevin Natividad, of course, who's coming off a 2-fight skid, so he's going to be one to get back in the win column also. Not had a successful UFC win yet, so a win tonight would be his first UFC win for him, and a big one for him. Got Maria Oliveira against Vanessa Demopoulos, of course, in the strawweight division. Fernie Garcia against Brady Highstand, and Natalia Silva versus Teresa Blader open at the card any minute now. So it's a good card. Obviously, we lost Jack Shaw on there for the UK audience. Would have been nice to see Jack Shaw against Kyler Phillips. Of course, Jack Shaw bouncing back from his loss against Ricky Simone. But obviously, he has got a knee injury. So he'll probably be out until, hopefully, the UK card, which is hopefully going to be in Cardiff, which would be huge for him, obviously, fighting out of Wales. But yeah, good fights all in all. Again, with it being in the Apex, if this card had been placed in a New Jersey or a San Diego or somewhere of that nature, Washington, I'm sure, would be a lot more happier with it. But unfortunately, we're in the Apex for hopefully the last of maybe there's only 4 fight cards left in the Apex, 5 fight cards in the Apex. I don't know if there's one towards the start of 2023 as we start to move towards those weekly cards traveling around Europe and America and all the other territories that the UFC are trying to look to break into and grow into as well. I'd be surprised if we don't get another UK card or a European card of some sort. Dublin deserves their card. They lost Whitaker and Till because of the pandemic. They deserve the card, obviously. Ian Gary running the sort of the showcase or a Dublin card, and obviously Cage Warriors champion Paul Hughes. We've got the return of Conor, albeit Conor is probably not going to be fighting in Ireland. It would be nice to see him fight there before he does bow out officially. But yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. We will be back for the recap where we talk about Bellator 288, of course, and have a little run up to. Actually, we've got Cage Warriors Unplugged also with George Hardwick looking to defend his title against Chris Bungard. That'll be happening tomorrow. So we will be back on Monday to recap all of those and everything that's taken place this week. And look at, of course, the PFL Championships, which take place on Friday. A fantastic week of MMA again, and hopefully another crowning of the British champion in Brendan Loughnane. But yes, make sure to follow Keisha MMA on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all that. It's been fantastic to see the growth of the channels across all platforms recently. So I do appreciate the support, and we will see you guys on the next one.